Welcome to Caching Waves. This is an Elliott Wave update for Bitcoin. Now, this is off last video I posted. I suggested either we had a bottom in play here between the 618 and the 1-to-1 extension of this W wave off the X right from our B zone, and we were looking for a 5-wave move in a diagonal, or we reject and we come back down to the 1-to-1 and attempt that move again. Now the issue in this area is if we're making a diagonal, we're expecting 3 waves. Right, to the upside. If we're expecting a correction, we're expecting 3 waves to the upside, then continuation to the downside. So it's very difficult when you're anticipating a diagonal when the correction and the wave to the upside looks the same, right? You're relying on fib levels at that point. Now, one thing I don't like about this being a completed correction is the time. I use the guideline. I want my W wave to look pretty similar in time and price as my Y. Obviously it's just a guideline, but I use that to kind of dictate what I'm expecting in the future. And as you can see, we wanted this area because we were holding this pitchfork very nicely from the beginning of the wave. So we're going to talk about the current count and what we expect as an alternative if it fails. So I'm going to go to the live chart. You can see we got that move to the downside. And you can also see we're at the bottom of our pitchfork. I always use pitchforks, and I suggest to use those as early indications of a completed wave, as in this entire sequence to the upside at the beginning of the pitchfork, all the way down at our first one too. That if we drift out of here with any significance, it's most likely a completed move to the upside, and we're making a larger time frame correction. Just use that as early indication and a guideline. So obviously the big area we're paying attention to is 58,888, right below this level, for obvious reasons. That's where majority of the stops are in all long trades. So if we come down to this level, I could see a lot of sell-off happening right below here. That's where all the major stops are, right? The most obvious pivot to everybody. So we'll see what we get to the upside. Obviously this can be complete. It looks like we might need one more move to the downside. This count is very difficult. Obviously we got a 3-wave here for our W wave. I had to start the count here as our X, so it's most likely a combination. You can get combinations as a WXY within a Y wave. So I'd have this as some sort of A, B, C as a expanded flat. We get our X and perhaps a zigzag, A, B, and it looks like we might need one more push to the downside to complete that. But what's most important here is the reaction at these levels. You see it doesn't quite look like we've bottomed yet unless we get pushing, and I can see a micro 5, but I want to see some momentum here to consider a bottom in, because bottoms tend to move relatively quickly when we get a reversal. So just watching this price action in real time today, but anything below that, I guess it was 59.05 was the pivot, not 5888, sorry. Anything with significance below that, and I have to consider an alternative. And that alternative is this was actually a 5th wave high here as a diagonal, and we're actually completing a larger 4th wave correction. I'm going to show you that in a moment. But until this fails, this is still my primary, that we're getting this 5th wave up to around 77,500 to complete our 3rd wave until this fails. And we'll go out to the hourly, same as last video. We're looking for that 1.618 extension on linear scale. It's working, not on log. And that would that's taken from our first one too, to top our 3rd wave, and then we'd expect a 4th wave and a 5th to the upside, and correct at or above the previous all-time highs at 69,000. just to give you a larger viewpoint. Let's go to the daily. Just so you can see the path I'm talking about. We get that one more push up, and then we consolidate above all-time highs, and then push for our fifth of our third. But I need to consider the alternative as well, and I'll show you that now. So we'll get rid of that and throw this on. So this is my alternative where we actually completed at that last high, and we'd expect further downside because we're actually correcting this entire move as a 5-wave sequence. So we're expecting further downside in that scenario. In that scenario, there's not a lot of support levels, which is a little bit frustrating right in our zone, unless we put on the 236 retracement, which would be a shy retracement, but we're pretty much already there, I believe. Yeah. So ideal areas we would find support is around the 382, right, which is at 57,578, which is a long ways away from where we are right now, about a 1-to-1 if we get a correction as a WXY from the high. But that would pull us to this larger pitchfork from our larger 1-2 in the middle, and then we would anticipate our third. Now what I don't like about this is we only hit a 1.382 for our third wave off this second 1-2, which is fine. We would just anticipate just the 1.618. We just move by one pivot for our regular guidelines, and we'd expect our third wave on the larger degree to top at 77,500. So you can see the difference is whether we're making a larger term correction now or one more wave up. That's the difference, but it's very important when it comes to trading, right? So as of right now, I'd be targeting, around 60K on linear, and on log scale, that's about 57. It's about a 3K window, 57,000 and 60,000 to attempt to put this fourth wave in, if this count is correct. Now down on the micro, I just wanted to show you the difference. In the first scenario, I had this as a flat, as a WXY, because we look for those in bullish markets. Like I mentioned to you, that becomes my default in very bullish markets, and we're looking for this move from here. The alternative, it doesn't break rules, but it just looks funny, is this would be our diagonal, and it would come out literally to the tip here. Just want to show you why I don't really like it. This was the best way to count it as a diagonal. You know, it's pretty ugly, because we'd get our 3 waves up as our ABC, get our X wave, ABC, and tiny little ABC. You can see it doesn't quite look right with guidelines. It's a little too fast. That's why I prefer the WXY, and we need to push from here. But it is valid, so got to pay attention to what's valid, right? So in this scenario, if we did top our third wave here, I would expect this to take quite a bit longer in time, and we'd just be working on our A wave or our W wave of an ABC, right, or a WXY. And in that scenario, let's see where we're at. That would be our A wave there. The question is this a flat in between? But we're right close to the 1-to-1 already. So I wouldn't be surprised to get some, a little bit of a reversal in the short term very soon, probably above 61,000. But what that would look like is we need to pay attention what happens in this area, right? If we make one more drop here and we see a very deep correction past the 618 retracement of this first move up, and then like a 1-to-1 there, you got to be very aware of this move, right? That we could get that move down to that 57, 60K before making a push to the upside. If we're making a move to the upside, we'd expect something a little more aggressive, something like this. Again, we'd be in that diagonal territory, so we're expecting 3. That's the difficulty of it. But we should most likely hold 618s. 786 is maybe for the first wave down, but it's going to be difficult to decide which one is happening. So I'd rely on fib levels rather than patterns at that point. But you can see we're at this crossroads right now of either a third wave top in, we're making a larger correction, or we've bottomed and we're looking for the 5th wave now. And I would argue the line in the sand is coming pretty closely here. And I'm going to be paying very close attention to the move we get right here. Right. All right, guys. So I wish I had a more concrete read on at the moment of a count, but you can see we're kind of at a moment of decision and need to pay very close attention to what happens here. Now, things you can watch is usually when these reject to the downside, we tend to come up to the lower end of the pitchfork and not really pass it. If we get something like this and we start drifting down, this is probably the area where I would open a position to the downside. But I'll explain that as we go. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. If you're long in this, realize most people know that that's where the big stop is currently. I wouldn't want to leave it much past that at all whatsoever. If this ends up being an expanded flat, we come through and reject very quickly. I'd be looking for a long once we get a bottoming pattern there. But yeah, that's it for Bitcoin, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.